Ah, welcome back to Atheists Don't Know, Episode 2, The Supernatural. I see some of you have really grown since our last discussion, and I don't just mean spiritually. Truly, your devotion to expanding in every direction is admirable. Philosophy requires weight, but I didn't think you'd take it literally. Now then, today's lesson, the supernatural, which, despite your substantial presence, remains something you haven't managed to sit on and crush completely. Let's begin. You cry that the supernatural is but the domain of fairy tales, of invisible skymen, of magic tricks and Easter rabbits. How curious. For in mocking what you call God, you have reduced him not to a subject of serious contemplation, but to a category error, comparing the source of being itself to conjurers and cartoons. My friends, I must confess, there is a certain twitch among you, a kind of intellectual Tourette's, an involuntary cry of, prove it, demonstrate this God, show me your magic sky wizard. And you say it with such speed, as though this were a conversation-ending spell, rather than the beginning of an inquiry. But let us slow down, before the chant begins again. And yet, you call this supernatural, as if nature were a sealed box and God merely an intruder. You mock what you do not understand and build a straw man of straw gods. This is not wisdom, it is theater. All that exists is natural, but what is this but a form of naturalism of the gaps? You accuse your opponents of God of the gaps, a phrase, I might add, invented by a Christian theologian. You say, we do not yet know, therefore nature. Oh, but do you not see? You are guilty of precisely the move you condemn. We lack explanation. Therefore, our preferred answer must fill the gap. You deny the supernatural because you say it is not observable. But even your own philosophers confess what counts as observable is itself a metaphysical presupposition. And what of the materialists? Even they admit that to declare the supernatural meaningless is to beg the question. To say it is not real because it cannot be real is not an argument, it is a spell muttered in academic robes. My dear friends, you do not know what the supernatural is. You cry and scream about something you don't know. You reject a God you have not taken the time to define. And now we begin on the supernatural, something your fatheads do not know.
All right, let's talk about the supernatural. Now for some of you, the word probably conjures up ghosts, wizards, or your cousin's crystal collection. But let's actually unpack what people mean by it, because even that's a mess. Here's what's usually said. It's not empirically testable. Sure, that's a fair point. You can't stick God in a petri dish. But let's be real. Not everything meaningful is empirically testable. Try falsifying the claim that your thoughts exist. Good luck. Next one. The supernatural is just a placeholder for ignorance. You've heard this one. We used to think Zeus made thunder, now we know better. But this assumes every metaphysical claim is just mythology 2.0. That's a huge generalization. Even atheist philosopher Thomas Nagel argues that reductionist materialism doesn't adequately explain consciousness, and he's not sneaking God in the back door. Then there's the favorite. If it breaks natural laws, it's supernatural. Okay, but define natural laws. David Hume, the OG skeptic, even admitted we don't observe laws, we infer them. And if the laws are just descriptive, not prescriptive, then calling something supernatural just means you didn't expect it. That's not a definition, that's a reaction. Also consider this. Most theists, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, even some Hindus, don't actually believe God is outside nature in the sense atheists argue. They believe God is the ground of being, not outside the system, but the reason the system exists in the first place. As Aquinas put it, God is not a being among beings. He is being itself. So when an atheist says, prove this supernatural thing exists, it's often based on a definition that neither side actually holds. Even atheist philosopher John Gray wrote, "Most atheists today are not rejecting God, but a parody of God." Look, you can reject religious claims all day. That's fair game. But if we're going to talk about the supernatural, let's at least agree on what we're talking about.
So here we are again. And yes, I'm once again here to explain the obvious to people who argue like they just discovered Reddit last week. Today's mystery, the supernatural, or as they define it, anything I don't understand, therefore nonsense. Like, I get it, you don't believe in anything? Cool, your choice. But why do they act like they've cracked the code to the universe? Your personality's so heavy, it's scaring off anyone who might actually want to sit through your TED Talk of a Tinder date. You're so busy preaching your godless gospel, you forgot how to talk to people who aren't mirrors. And their personality's so heavy, it's no wonder nobody's lining up to carry it. Imagine someone says, "God is outside space and time," and the reply is, "Then prove it with a microscope." I'm sorry, what? That's like asking someone to weigh gravity with a bathroom scale. Next they say, "The supernatural is just made-up stuff from ancient people." Oh, so consciousness, morality, math, all hallucinations? Amazing how skeptical people get when they run out of YouTube arguments. And then, when they're cornered, out comes the flying spaghetti monster. They just never get tired of bringing it up. They act like it's this great analogy, and we all can guess why they are clearly obsessed with it. Reminder: that was literally satire made up by a guy named Bobby in 2005. But sure, that's your intellectual trump card. Keep fantasizing about tackling it in a pool of Alfredo sauce and devouring the whole galaxy's worth of pasta. Have you guys caught it in your dreams and wake up eating your pillow and your bed? But sure, let's pretend that's just as historically serious as, say, Jesus of Nazareth, who even agnostic historians like Bart Ehrman, who doesn't even believe Jesus was divine, still say Jesus definitely existed. And he said, the notion that Jesus is a made-up myth like Zeus is simply not taken seriously by any serious historian of antiquity, Christian or non-Christian, which is kind of awkward if you've built your whole brand on pretending he was as fictional as pasta in the sky. But hey, don't let history stop you from feeling right on the internet. And, like, ever notice how many of these guys look like fat frogs? I'm just saying, they'll roll their eyes at anything spiritual. But then they'll argue a ghost and a fairy are basically the same thing. So dumb. Like, just because two things share some traits doesn't mean they're identical. That's a false analogy. Philosopher Edward Pfizer nailed it. I'm summarizing here. Comparing belief in God to Santa is like comparing a prime number to a unicorn. One's conceptually necessary, the other's just storybook fluff. Point is, their logic's flimsier than their dating profiles. Maybe if they spent less time preaching and more time listening, they wouldn't be solo binge-watching their own smugness. They're out here misrepresenting the supernatural so bad, it's like you could show them a video of themselves waddling around like some magical fat frog creature. And trust me, plenty do, and they'd struggle to tell the difference. And then there's this chestnut. Jesus is just a zombie. Really? Let's break this down like your chairs eventually do. A zombie is a mindless, undead corpse, animated by virus, curse, or necromantic power, often tries to eat people. That last part might be you, not the theology. Now compare this to the Christian claim of resurrection. A glorified, conscious, rational, healed being, alive by divine power, capable of speech, compassion, and brunch on a beach. See John chapter 21. You people live in fantasy. You worship Tolkien and Rowling like popes of Reddit, yet you still can't grasp the difference? Let me help. Gandalf dies fighting the Balrog. He returns resurrected, not undead. Surely you remember that one? Aslan is slain on the stone table. Resurrected, not a lion zombie. Harry Potter dies at Voldemort's hand, then returns by sacrificial magic, somehow not craving Christmas, the season of joy, love, and, apparently, atheists throwing tantrums over a baby in a manger. What's the deal, huh? You keep comparing God to Santa Claus like it's some mic drop moment. Newsflash. Your edgy little metaphor isn't as clever as you think. You know who you are, out there clutching your Dawkins books, rolling your eyes at every Christmas tree like it personally insulted your IQ. Let's talk about it. Why are you so obsessed with tearing down our jolly holiday? Is it because you grew up poor? And Santa never slid down your chimney with that shiny new Game Boy? What's the matter? Did Daddy not love you enough to leave presents under the tree? I mean, I get it. Christmas morning, you're staring at an empty stocking, and now you're out here taking it out on the rest of us. But here's the thing. Just because your childhood was more lump of coal than winter wonderland, doesn't mean you have to ruin Christmas for everyone else. Oh, you say it's about freedom? Please. You're not fooling anyone with that tired excuse. Banning nativity scenes, whining about carols in public. I can just picture you, lying awake at night, haunted by visions of a good old family Christmas tree chasing you down the street. Tinsel flying, ornaments rattling. Does Christmas give you nightmares? Be honest. Is it the jingle bells? The twinkling lights? Or just the fact that people are out here celebrating something bigger than your fat ass and your ego? Look, I'm not saying you have to believe. But just because people won't let you eat the trees too, doesn't mean Christmas has to be your personal punching bag. So maybe this year, instead of trying to cancel the holiday, just grab a hot cocoa, chill out, and let the rest of us enjoy the season. Merry Christmas, atheists.
All right, I'm back. And yes, I'm once again pointing out how these guys don't know what they're talking about. The supernatural, or as they like to define it, stuff we don't believe in, but we're definitely still angry about. Now, many among you have said, believing in God is just like believing in Santa Claus. You cannot see either, thus both are equally absurd. Let us examine this. For if one compares two things based only on what they appear to share, and from this concludes they are the same, is that not what we call a false analogy? The structure is simple, is it not? A has property X, B has property X, therefore, A and B are the same. But is it just to conclude this, when the similarities are trivial and the differences profound? Tell me, is the invisibility of a thing sufficient to make it fictional? What does absence of a particular sense data make something not real? Would not the blind then think a painting does not exist? So, my friends, you tell me that because God cannot be seen, he must not exist. Let us test this thought. In your own age, there was a time, not long ago, when no man had seen a microbe. The sick were thought to be cursed or breathing ill winds. But then came a man, Van Leeuwenhoek, and with polished glass, he looked again. And there they were, tiny living things, unseen for all of history, now undeniable. Do you deny bacteria exist because the eye cannot see them unaided? Now, consider this. God, as understood by the greatest minds in history, is said to be the ground of being, the necessary cause, the source of order and intelligibility. Santa Claus, meanwhile, is said to dwell at the North Pole, maintain flying livestock, and reward obedient children with gift cards. Are these comparisons honest or convenient? Absence of evidence would be evidence of absence in the case of Santa, whereas it would not be in the case of God. We would expect to see some actual evidence of Santa by now. There's nobody coming down chimneys, and nobody in the North Pole. Even if I grant he has magic and can hide, he's an imperfect man, and would have left some sort of clue of him being actually real. Not so with a perfect God, and the more attributes of God you give him, the less Santa he becomes. Suppose I told you that somewhere, this very moment, a small fly hovers within the vast expanse of your Grand Canyon. You look into the canyon, no fly. Do you then conclude, no such fly exists? But surely your sight is limited. The canyon is large, the fly rather small. Would it not be more accurate to say, I see no fly, but given the size of the canyon and the limits of my vision, I ought not expect to. Now, what if the thing in question is not a fly, but God? Not a small part within the world, but, as many theists claim, the ground of all being. Not a thing among things, but the cause of the canyon itself. And still you say, "But I do not see him. There is no sign." Then I ask, what sort of sign were you expecting? A footprint? A business card? So again I ask, is it not possible that your expectations are ill-fitted to the object of your inquiry? That what you call lack of evidence is merely evidence of poor assumptions? In such a case, what is wise? To conclude confidently that nothing is there? Or to say humbly, what I seek may not appear where I am looking or in the way I expect? So I ask you, shall we continue to throw around analogies like dice in the street? Or shall we examine what makes one claim metaphysically weighty and the other merely seasonal? Let us think carefully. For the misuse of analogy is not the mark of a seeker, but of one who already believes he knows. Because you wouldn't want to even imply you're making a knowledge claim, would you? You might actually have to defend yourself. Let's begin with my method, the syllogism. Premise. 1. Atheists often reject the concept of God by equating him with other supernatural claims, such as ghosts, Santa Claus, or the flying spaghetti monster. Assuming all supernatural ideas are equally absurd and unjustified. Premise 2. This equation ignores significant philosophical, historical, and metaphysical differences between the concept of God in classical theism and trivial or fictional supernatural entities. God is defined as necessary being, uncaused cause, etc. Santa is contingent and invented. Conclusion. Therefore, the atheist claim that God is just another absurd supernatural claim is based on a false analogy, and their argument is invalid, revealing that they do not understand what theists mean by the supernatural. He conflates the metaphysically rich with the mythologically silly. He shouts, "All gods are the same," yet has not read even one with care. And when pressed, he says, "You believe in the supernatural. That's all nonsense." But when asked to define the supernatural, he stumbles. A retort? Truly? And on what divine foundation do you think it stands? You press that proof button like it's some enchanted talisman, as if evidence springs forth at your bidding, no thought required. But very well. I will show you at least one for this video, as long as it is. Tell me, my friend, have you heard of the Atheist Experience? It is a modern forum, not unlike the marketplaces of Athens, where men and women call in to challenge and inquire. Many who identify as atheists hold it in high regard, even claiming it to be the finest representation of their position. Would you not agree that to understand a view, one should examine its strongest expression? Then ought we not examine the arguments posed there? For if they are indeed the best, as some assert, they will either withstand scrutiny or be found wanting through careful questioning. And what better way to pursue truth than by testing the best a claim has to offer? First, I will post the clip in its entirety and then break it down.
It's just as likely that I did it as some other thing, any other thing you could name.
Do you have the immense amount of power that would create the universe?
My soul does. My physical body doesn't, but that's because it's a physical body, but my soul does.
You're willing to agree that the evidence that we have indicates we have no positive evidence that shows that something comes from nothing.
Sure. All the evidence that we have seems to point that direction, and we don't have any evidence that contradicts it. Well, that's really cool, and it's a good way to say that it's probably true that something can't come from nothing.
What a load of, excuse me, my word. They seem quite certain, though I cannot find even the ghost of reason in what they have said. Their arguments are noise dressed in the costume of thought. It offends not my beliefs, but my sense of logic. But I will break this down.
It's just as likely that I did it as some other thing, any other thing you could name.
Fallacy 1. False equivalence. Curious indeed. Shall we test it with reason? You compare yourself, a finite being with limited knowledge and means, to causes that may be metaphysical, cosmic or theoretical, and yet you weigh them as equal. That is like saying a pebble and a planet are the same, because both are round. Philosopher Graham Oppy, a respected atheist, warns us, flattening distinctions between hypotheses is not skepticism. It is carelessness. And then she proceeds to dig herself a deeper hole when she responds. I think all of us can claim it's not as likely that we did it if we were an all-knowing God. By definition, it stands to reason. We'd know. Thus, there's numerous, rather near infinite number of examples of individuals placed with that hypothetical would have to say no. If they were honest, clearly, unlike this woman.
Do you have the immense amount of power that would create the universe?
My soul does. My physical body doesn't, but that's because it's a physical body, but my soul does.
First, she claimed, any other thing you can name is just as likely as me. This implies a kind of universal equality. No cause is more or less likely than another. All sit on equal footing. But then, when confronted with the absurdity of her creating a universe, she responds, but not me. My soul. This is not a clarification. It's a contradiction. She said all things are equally plausible. And then made herself the exception by invoking something unobservable and undefined. If all things are equally likely, then she doesn't get to smuggle in an unseen soul and pretend she's still following the rule. She has broken her own framework. Now, let us call this error by its proper name, special pleading. This fallacy arises when a universal rule is laid down, but then an exception is made without justification, merely to save the claim from falling apart. In this case, the rule was, any other thing you can name is just as likely, but when pressed, the speaker says, well, my soul isn't just as likely. It's more likely because it's mine, and it's metaphysical. So not all things are equal then? If the soul has special properties, unseen and unshared by other things, then you are no longer playing by your own rule. You are protecting your claim with an arbitrary, unprovable exemption. So I ask, do you stand by the rule that all things are equally plausible? Or do you now say some things, like your own invented soul, get preferential treatment, while others do not? For if your position contradicts itself and requires a fallacy to survive, then perhaps it is not a position at all, but a costume draped over confusion.
We're willing to agree that the evidence that we have indicates we have no positive evidence that shows that something comes from nothing.
Sure, all the evidence that we have seems to point that direction, and we don't have any evidence that contradicts it. Well, that's really cool, and it's a good way to say that it's probably true that something can't come from nothing.
So now we are to believe that all the evidence shows something cannot come from nothing. A claim stated with the pomp of certainty. And yet it comes from the mouth of a professed skeptic, one who parades under the banner of probability and likelihood, rather than absolute truth. Let us begin, my friends, by asking, what is intellectual dishonesty? Is it not the act of applying standards inconsistently, of pretending to seek truth while secretly guarding a conclusion? It is when a man pretends to reason from evidence, but only when the evidence favors him. And when it does not, he waves it off with vague gestures and shrugs of ambiguity. Now tell me, how shall a man defend the sanctity of reason if he abandons it the moment it no longer flatters his bias? Not that it matters, since following the atheist's reasoning, they can't justify any words that come out of their mouths. They are soulless apes that could at any moment throw their feces. As data from the Philpaper's 2020 survey of philosophers, which breaks down belief in libertarian free will by theists versus atheists, roughly 89% of self-identified atheists in the survey reject libertarian free will, seeing it as incompatible with atheism. Not good enough? Even atheist prophet Matt Dillahunty declared his mind does not exist.
okay, a mind is an emergent property of the brain. Does that mean a mind is physical, distinct from the brain, or
The mind doesn't exist.
identical
The
to
mind cannot
Oh,
and have.
noble atheists, you paragons of reason, you champions of the void. Let us ponder together, shall we? You say there is no soul, no mind, no spark of divine will rattling about in your mortal frames. All is but atoms bouncing in a cosmic piñata, yes? No purpose, no plan, just a chaotic jig of particles. Now, if I follow your logic, and I do love a good chase through the thickets of thought, then you, my friends, are but soulless, mindless husks, tugged by the strings of a universe that cares not a whit for your opinions. Consider this. If you have no free will, as you so boldly proclaim, nay, comically proclaim, then what are your words but the burps of a mindless machine? Can I trust the utterances of a puppet whose strings are pulled by chaos? Chuckles. Why, you're more unpredictable than a monkey flinging its delicate treasures in a fit of cosmic randomness. At least a monkey might aim. Now, let us speak of this Jesus fellow you like to jest about, calling him a zombie with his rising from the dead antics. But here's the rub. Jesus, at least, thinks he has free will. He's out there preaching, choosing, turning water into wine, like a man with a plan. You, my dear atheists, admit you're just monkey meat robots, dancing to the tune of a universe that's half drunk and tone deaf. Between you and Jesus, who's the real zombie? I'd wager you're closer to shambling about, muttering brains while claiming it's just neurons firing. So, why should I trust a word you say? If you're but a whirlwind of chaos, a puppet of chance, who's to say you won't toss your feces at me mid-sentence? And now, let us seal this with a final thrust of reason. If you're there dangling from branches, if you lack souls, minds, and the will to steer your thoughts, how can you claim to know anything? Not the supernatural, not the natural, not even the taste of your spicy Cheetos. Your every thought is but random brain fizz, a cosmic burp with no truth or falsity to call its own. Who's to say if you don't just end up sitting in a pool of your own filth one day? You are mindless, soulless monkeys moving around, dancing at the whim of chaos. You cannot evaluate, you cannot judge, for there's no you to do the judging, just a lard head full of aimless sparks. Tune in next time for our rollicking show, Atheists Don't Know. And perhaps, most hilariously, they don't know atheism. If they ever grasped what they stand for, they might even get a date. If only they could hold a consistent thought in that wobbly, gelatinous head of theirs.